Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office for Thursday, January the 11th, 2024. We have a lot to talk about in today's video. We have Winter Storm Gerri that is going to bring immense snowfall for the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest with blizzard conditions very likely. And then we're also going to be talking about the severe weather for the Deep South and the very cold Arctic air that will shatter many records across the northern plains of the United States. So in today's video, we have a lot to digest. So here's a look at the very detailed European model for Thursday afternoon, January the 11th, 2024. And what you're looking at here is your precipitation type forecast. So areas in blue indicate where it's snowing, right? Where it's just kind of a fluffy snow. You get the idea. Where there's green is where it's raining. And if you get the pink colors, that's where there's freezing rain. And if you get the beige colors is where there's sleet. So in this map, we only see snow and rain because the temperature profile does not allow other precipitation types. So where we do have some snow is over the four corners. So over Albuquerque, New Mexico, over Denver, Colorado. That's where we're going to see a little bit of snow coming down this afternoon. Not particularly heavy, but it's going to throw a little wrinkle into your evening commute, all right? If you're in northeastern, say Arizona, that's where you're going to be seeing also a little bit of the snowfall coming down. But Phoenix and down here in Tucson, and if you're in El Paso, Texas, you're not going to see a whole lot of, or El Paso, New Mexico, it's kind of on the border. You're going to see a little bit of rainfall and a little bit of rainfall here. But look at this. Another winter storm is going to be impacting Oregon and Washington, Idaho, and Montana. And this is not going to be particularly strong, but what it's going to bring is it's going to bring that reinforcement of very cold Arctic air. I mean, we're going to see some of the coldest temperatures at least this winter season, and could be the coldest that we have seen in over 30 years, perhaps, in some areas, especially in Montana. So wait until you see these temperature anomalies and just how cold it's going to get. I'm telling you, folks, this is going to be deadly. I think we're going to have a lot of issues, a lot of people suffering because of how cold it's going to be unless you can dress up in layers. But now what we're going to focus on and resume back with what we need to look at is the bona fide system. Winter Storm Gerri is going to undergo baroclinic bombing cyclogenesis, where pressures drop 24 millibars in 24 hours. And that's going to shape up over the upper Midwest into the Great Lakes. Pressures at this point for Friday morning, not too low, right? We are down at 994, 991 millibars, which is the measure of pressure here, right? It's a unit of measurement. But what you don't see is the gradient, which is the pressure gradient over distance. And so the tighter the isobars here is where you're seeing the tighter pressure gradient. The difference in air pressure from the Arctic high in Canada to the surface low with Gerri to the south. And when these gradients get very tight, you get some strong winds, and the winds could get strong enough to bring blizzard conditions. We have a lot of weather products that are out in this area because of how intense the snowfall is going to be, how strong the winds are going to be. We're going to be seeing blizzard conditions, ground blizzard conditions, in fact. Not even, I mean, you're going to have the snow coming down, but you're going to also have ground blizzard. So you're going to have near zero visibility, or perhaps that of 0 feet at times. And so that's going to really lead to a lot of travel problems. But watch this. Watch what Winter Storm Gerri does. This is Friday morning, 992-ish millibars. Watch this. By the afternoon, it goes from 992 to 976 millibars. So that's almost 20 millibar drop. Actually, that's over 20 millibars drop in 12 hours. So Gerri is going to go from 992, 994 millibars to 976 in 12 hours. That's explosive. We're going to, and again, that's what you call a bombing cyclone. Cyclogenesis is the meteorological term for this. Heavy snow, you bet it. It's going to be a highly impactful system. It's been making a lot of weather headlines on the Weather Channel, on AccuWeather. Even my local news station here in California has even been talking about it, which you don't hear. That doesn't happen very often. So Winter Storm Gerri is going to cause a lot of snowmageddonness. We're going to see blizzards. We're going to see big snow. We're going to see big Arctic outbreaks with this. The Arctic air is going to be modified a little bit into Saturday, but once we get another piece of energy kind of rippling through that flow, that polar vortex, that colder air is really going to slide southward. It's going to just add more oomph to the colder air that we already have in place. So that system moves out, and then look at this. You're not going to see a whole lot of rainfall or anything in the wake of that system, right? Because the air is going to be dry, but it's also going to be cold. And then, of course, we have another system that we're still eyeballing on. It's this right here in the Midwest, in the Deep South, where some of the models are just kind of they're having a hard time kind of computing or kind of analyzing on what this system is going to do, because now we have a lot more colder air than what is previously forecast. The air is going to be drier, and besides that, colder air doesn't hold as much moisture, and so at the end of the day, this system may not have a whole lot of moisture to work with, but any little bit here is going to be snow, and a little bit you might get a few inches on the ground. Not only that, when you get the warm air getting pulled in from the south and this colder air coming in out of the north, this kind of boundary, we call it the polar front or the Arctic front, we might see some ice, some sleet and freezing rain along that boundary, according to the Euro, and then this kind of moves on through. Look at this. You might see ice into the Gulf Coast of Louisiana. Even Houston, Texas might see ice. That is really far south. I mean, you don't see that very often. All right, the last time we saw that was a few years ago. Okay, when there was a big ice storm in Texas. So you don't see this very often. Just showing you how expansive the colder air is going to be. And then there's a lot of uncertainty in regards to what might happen for the Northeast, right? So now switching over to our American model, the GFS that is, let's kind of go forward here. The GFS, very confident that we're going to have a bona fide system, 992 millibars to start. This drops all the way down to 974 by Friday afternoon. And look at that snow. Snowfall rates exceeding easily over 3 to 6 inches an hour at times from, say, Illinois all the way into northern Indiana into Michigan. Only that the GFS, the American model, has a snowfall a little further south, which there is a little bit of a disagreement here. If we even look at the Canadian model, let's go over to that. The operational model, a little bit more consistent with what the Euro is showing. So the GFS here might be a little bit of an outlier, showing snow all the way down to, say, Indianapolis, Kokomo, Indiana, as well as portions there of western Ohio, like Cincinnati, might get a little bit of a dusting, according to the GFS. And then that system moves on through, and then you're left with drier conditions. And then there is that piece of energy that we're watching closely over the Rockies by the weekend. So this is Sunday, January the 14th. Remember, we're going to have some very cold Arctic air in place, so anything falls is going to be in the form of snow at this point. And you can see snow falling as far south as Dallas, Texas, perhaps. Look at that. Sleet and freezing rain is certainly a possibility. Now, while the GFS is more of a generous output here as far as the amount of ice, watch what happens to this air mass. Okay, you got the warmer air coming in. We could develop a surface low under some baroclinic forcing along that Arctic front aloft, and so therefore we might get a nor'easter sneaking up the east coast by the middle of next week. This would be Tuesday into Wednesday, and we'll see about that. Is this going to be a significant one, or is this not? There is some coherence here with the GFS as we look at the Canadian, also a similar outcome, but the Euro is now our outlier on that scenario, showing virtually no snow at all versus the Canadian and the GFS. Both of these models are indicating we could see a nor'easter, so maybe another winter storm that could impact a lot of people again. After all, this is winter, and then, of course, we're going to have to keep an eye on what goes on across the West later next week. We could have more intense storms for that area. So now, how much snow could Winter Storm Gerri bring by the next few days? Well, right now, if you are in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region here where I circled in, you could see easily 12 to 16 or 12 to 18 inches of snow. I mean, that's 1.5 feet of snow from northern Indiana, especially right across Michigan, is that corridor where we could see the heaviest snow. If you're in Wisconsin, if you're in Iowa, you might see 12 to 18 inches of snow too, according to the NAM model. But if we look at the GFS and some of the other global models, very similar amounts here on the GFS. But if we look at the European model, a little further north, but not as aggressive there over Iowa, where you might see as much as 6 to 10 inches, whereas the GFS and the NAM are both indicating much more. But one thing for sure is that that Michigan area right in here, and also for the Illinois, Wisconsin, you might pick up anywhere between 12 to 18 inches. That is very significant in a populated area. We're going to get a lot of reports of blizzard conditions, power outages because of how strong the wind is going to be. This is going to be a beast of a winter storm that we have not dealt with since 2021 of Christmas. Winter Storm Elliot, that was a big one, but this one could be just as big, if not a little bigger than that one, because of how much snowfall we're continuing with. And the added colder air in the wake of this will make things even more significant. So now that we talked about the snowy side of the system, well, this system has another side to it, and that's, of course, a warmer air advection. This is going to trigger severe weather for the Deep South and even for the Southeast. The ingredients are there for a potential severe weather event that is going to unfold from, say, Arkansas, eastern Texas, into the Arklatex area, spreading east into Georgia, and even for the Carolinas. This, again, will include the potential for mini tornadoes, some of which could be strong, damaging winds that you can bet on that, wind gusts exceeding 75 plus miles an hour. And of course, maybe some intense rainfall that could cause some minor flooding. Since this is going to be a fast mover, we're not really looking at big time rainfall accumulations, but the severe weather side is going to be something. So this will look at the HRRR model. And as we go forward, this model thinks that maybe some storms could initiate over Little Rock, Arkansas, further south there in the southern Arkansas, then eventually even into Louisiana. And so this is where our forcing is going to start taking place. And then as we go forward, look at this line right there. Little Rock, Jonesboro, very intense rainfall into the overnight hours. So when you're going to sleep, make sure you have your weather radio on. It's a good idea to, because I know smartphones nowadays, there's a setting in there where you can set weather alerts to go off automatically without just checking other sources, right? So make sure you have your radio, you have weather alerts ready to go, because we will see an overnight tornado threat here because of the wind shear. Very heavy rainfall, maybe some small hail, and some very strong wind gusts exceeding 60 to 75 miles an hour easily over this portion of Arkansas and then further south. And then once we go into the day tomorrow, that's when that cold front really explodes. Look at this line here, all the way from Lake Charles, Shreveport, Little Rock. If you're in Memphis, Jonesboro, Jackson in Tennessee, we're talking a lot about severe thunderstorms here. And take note, some of these storms actually on the HRRR, we have more scattered in nature, more semi-discrete supercells within a very sheared environment. Wow, if we get any of these kidney bean shaped storms, and let's kind of go forward right in here, especially by the middle of the morning hours. This is right around, say, 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning for Central Eastern Time. Look at Birmingham. We can see some of these kidney bean shaped storms, and these are the ones that could produce some strong tornadoes, perhaps in a very juiced up environment. Lots of instability to work with further south in a narrow corridor, and it's particularly in this area where we're going to see the most instability. This warm sector is where we have dew points in the mid to upper 60s. We have cooler air aloft that destabilizes things. And when you get this, when you get a trough to move on through, we get directional and speed shear with height, and it looks to be very strong. We can really get things going. These storms could begin to rotate and drop mini tornadoes within this environment. So keep in mind, it will be the strong damaging winds exceeding 75 miles an hour, and it will be the potential for numerous tornadoes, some of which could be strong, perhaps especially the further south you go where that atmosphere is more primed, more juiced up. We're also going to have an Atlantic ridge also over Cape Hatteras that could funnel some drier air and cooler air into the system, which could kind of otherwise kind of tame the threat here in Mississippi and Alabama, and that's why we're not going to see any higher probabilities out from the Storm Prediction Center just yet. But an enhanced risk through this area really covers it very well for the severe weather threat. And the Weather Channel has put out Torcon values of 3 and 4 and even a 5 in this area. So keep that in mind. We definitely have a tornado threat out of this. The reason why we're seeing a tornado threat in the free warm sector is if we take a look at our surface winds, actually let's go right over to there. We can see that we have southeasterly winds. So let me actually make my arrows right here. So we have southeasterly flow at the surface, anywhere between 25 to 35 miles an hour. There's wind advisories for that reasoning because of the winds that are going to be really strong. But then when we go a layer up, so when we go up to 5,000 feet above the atmosphere, see these wind barbs now, or see these streamlines? These are now out of the southwesterly direction. Well, that's directional and speed shear. Look at those winds, by the way. Over 90 knots at 5,000 feet. So we have screaming low-level jet ripping through the Mississippi, Alabama area into the deep south here of the United States. And then when we look at the 500 millibar wind chart here, these winds are out of the due southwesterly direction. So we have lots of curvature to the photographs. The atmosphere is going to be very deeply sheared here. And so again, if we get any of these storms, if they are discrete, if they are well separated from the cold front, the prefrontal or some confluence bands, we could get some strong tornadoes, especially in this area. This covers it really well right in here, south of, say, Tennessee, into Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. We could have a lot of problems. Tornadoes, some of them strong, damaging winds, that sort of thing. Make sure you have weather alerts enabled for Friday. This is a Friday, Thursday night, late night Thursday, into early Friday threat, even into Saturday morning for the extreme southeast. So looking at that, the dew points are going to be high. Again, it's this narrow corridor where this warm front sets up and where this cooler air moves in, right, is where we have the warm sector. And that's where we have the best shear, the instability that's going to be in place. And there's your instability. Not particularly high. We're not talking 3,000 or 4,000 joules of CAPE here. Otherwise, we would have certainly a high risk for severe weather, like a high risk, a level 5. But due to the fact that the CAPE numbers here are not very high, that's why there's a little bit more of uncertainty, but the wind shear will likely compensate. The kinematics are going to be pretty extreme with surface shear vectors that are very significant here, anywhere between 300 to 500 meters squared per second squared, which is more than sufficient to trigger some big time severe weather. So now that we talked about the severe weather side of things, let's move on and talk about the temperatures, because of course it's making headlines already. We got wind chill warnings, we got wind chill watches out, and yes, we even got wind chill advisories. Take a look at these temperatures. This is from the Euro model for today. The forecast temperatures, of course, you're not even going to break out at 0 degrees in portions of Montana, like Billings, if you're in Great Falls there, if you are in, say, North Dakota, gonna struggle to warm up at all today. Fargo might even barely reach 2 or 3 degrees above 0 before it drops off again. The high plains, look at this. Kansas, once that cooler air moves in, yeah, it's gonna be awfully cold. You're gonna start off temperatures into the single digits tomorrow. And then the colder air really moves in. And once we have Winter Storm Gerri that really bonifies, that's going to drag more colder air out of Canada. This Arctic air mass, that is. Temperatures up here, by the way, in British Columbia, Alberta, Canada, Saskatchewan, -25 to -50 degrees below zero. Yeah, that's your daytime high temperatures, by the way. And then look at this. It just gets colder and colder and colder. And so Saturday morning, right in here in Montana, you could have temperatures as low as -30 to -40 degrees. In some of the coldest prone areas, might even get as low as -50 degrees at night. So if you are in the backcountry, if you're prone to some cold temperatures, this could be an all-time record low temperatures and all-time record low daytime highs for you all there in Montana. Not only that, though, look at the Midwest. This is going to stretch further east and further south. And so by Sunday morning, look at St. Louis, Missouri, -10 degrees. Kansas, Nebraska, -10 to -20 degrees. If you're in Indiana, even 0 degrees, Ethan B., where you live. So, yeah, this really stretches far south. And then perhaps by the time we go into overnight, Sunday to Monday, it might even be colder. Look at this. Lake effect snow, you can surely bet that that's going to occur since this colder air is going to be in place. And it's going to stay around for a while, folks. It's not really going to mix out very much. So perhaps from now all the way through Wednesday next week, we could be seeing temperatures below 0 degrees in many spots. Factor in the wind chill value now, because there's going to be some wind with this Arctic air mass. It's going to feel even colder than the actual air temperatures. So let's play that through, huh? So this is for Friday morning. Wind chill values, I mean, single digits in Oklahoma? Are you kidding me? Look at this. In Montana, -50 to -60 degree wind chill values. I don't know if that's going to even end up happening, but it is worth noting here in the video that these temperatures are going to be very cold. And look at this. Saturday morning, wind chill values, perhaps -45 to -55 degrees. Yeah, I mean, you just cannot thrive very well. So make sure you have any non-perishable food. Make sure you're well stocked up, because you're not going to even be able to go anywhere. There's probably going to be a lot of school cancellations or delays because just how cold it's going to be. These wind chills are not really survivable by a lot of means, and you can see why. I mean, this is just significant. And then the wind chill values really come further south. Look at this. Might feel like -10 degrees in Dallas, Texas, northern Texas. I mean, if you're in Indiana, might feel like -30 degrees for your Sunday morning time frame. -30 to -50 degrees across much of the Dakotas and the northern plains. Oh my goodness. This, I'm telling you, this is, you don't see this very often. And then this could continue all the way through until Tuesday into Wednesday next week, before maybe a pattern change will lift that colder air back into the higher latitudes. I know this video is really long, but let's take a look here at our temperature anomalies. Just going to go through this very quickly. Temperatures, okay, and this is for you, Ethan, okay? I mean, you're going to be like, oh my gosh. Look at the temperature anomalies over central and western Montana, northern Idaho. Could see temperatures 82 degrees below normal. 82 degrees below average. You can see why there's probably going to be all-time record low daytime highs and all-time record low nighttime lows out of this, because of just, I mean, I cannot even fathom of how cold that actually is below average. Okay, and then that's going to stretch all the way into the Midwest. Look at 45 degrees below normal by the time we go into early next week on Sunday and Monday. I mean, there's not going to be much relief. Make sure your heater works really well, because you're going to need that quite a bit. And then hopefully by the end of the forecast here, we might see a pattern change where the colder air starts retreating a little further northward. There is some recovery. Well, that's on the Euro model. We'll have to see. But in the short term, brace yourself for some of the coldest temperatures on record. All-time record lows are certainly possible in many areas of Montana and also for Wyoming. Therefore, the United States is covered again, smothered in alerts. Look at this, okay? I'm going to try to keep this short, but we got blizzard warnings in Idaho, winter storm warnings up there. We got avalanche warnings. My gosh! I'm just telling you right now, this is just the start of it. I'm telling you. All right, winter storm watches for California. We even got hard freeze watches and warnings in the southern end of the Central Valley, showing you just how expansive this cold air mass is. We got hard freeze warnings, high wind warnings down here, blowing dust advisories. Look at the wind products out of Winter Storm Gerri that's expected to develop. All of these right here are wind products. High fire danger in southern Texas. Wind advisories, high wind watches, high wind warnings. And then you go on to the northern tier of the United States, we got wind chill advisories, wind chill warnings. Yes, this is wind chill advisories and wind chill watches all the way down into northern Texas. So, yes, brace yourself, and I would not be surprised if northernmost or even central portion thereof, say Oklahoma, gets under wind chill advisories in days to come, because this Arctic air mass is going to be that impactful. Then, of course, we got winter storm warnings. Doesn't surprise me if we get blizzard warnings out of this. And, of course, we got storm watches over Lake Michigan. Those could become storm warnings with wind gusts exceeding 50 to even 60 knots over the Lake Michigan area. That is very, very dangerous. Blizzard warnings up here. We got flood watches. I mean, I'm going to count how many states this afternoon are on, and I'm going to post something on Twitter about this. I'm actually going to go live. We're going to have to go live on this afternoon, right around 3:30 or 4 o'clock, because we really need to talk in a lot of detail on what's going to happen, because this is going to be life-threatening. I don't like using that word very often, but I am not liking what I'm seeing with Winter Storm Gerri. This is just absolutely super impactful. Well, that's going to sum it up for today's video, folks. Please stay safe. I could only do my best at making sure you all are prepared. Please share this with your family and friends on social media. Make sure you have all notifications turned on, because we're probably going to end up going live on this to do a discussion on Winter Storm Gerri, because it's so significant. Beginning at around 3, maybe 3:30 or so, we're going to stream live on this for a little bit to talk about this. So make sure you share, like, and subscribe, and also be sure to check out my social media for latest updates, because this is very significant. But anyways, I'll be back in the home weather office this afternoon and tomorrow with another update on this beast of a winter storm.